uh, hand over a charge to Srinivas for celebrations. Go ahead, Srinivas.
Thanks, Milind. Morning, afternoon, evening, and good to have 20 of us here, maybe 21 people of us to start celebrating our 4th anniversary. But before that, I think we have a good job. We are celebrating 2 months' birthdays, August and September. So we have A.V. Suresh, Kenny, and Chacha couple, Chacha and Vinita. So
Wow.
we have 4 of them, and all of them are here. So in person, we are wishing them happy birthday.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy birthday,
Thank
guys.
you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
मेरे दोस्त का बर्थडे है मेरे यार का जान से भी प्यारे मेरे यार का बर्थडे है दिल तार का लविंग केयरिंग दोस्त का दुर्लभ प्राणी दोस्त का अब मुझे सताने वाले दोस्त का मुझे पकाने वाले दोस्त का उलझाता है उलझता है हंसाता है रुलाता है दिल से मुझको चाहता है जिगर का छला मेरा दोस्त जरूरत हकीकत मेरा दोस्त सबसे सच्चा साथी मेरा दोस्त दुनिया में प्यारा मेरा दोस्त बर्थडे है मेरे दोस्त का बर्थडे है मेरे यार का जान से भी प्यारे मेरे यार का बर्थडे है दिल तार का लविंग केयरिंग दोस्त का दुर्लभ प्राणी दोस्त का अब मुझे सताने वाले दोस्त का मुझे पकाने वाले दोस्त का
Wonderful. Happy birthday to everyone.
Happy birthday, everybody.
Happy birthday.
Birthday.
And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chacha, I think.
Wonderful to have friends like you all, true friends. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
Happy birthday, everyone. All the very best.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll move to our anniversary celebrations. And it's really remarkable. So I'll quickly read a few highlights, what has happened in these 4 years. So we started with about 15 book lovers, and over a period of time, we added members, and now today 35 members strong. We lost, unfortunately, 2 members, Rajiv Chandra and Ajay Kumar. It actually started as a relief from COVID isolation, but it is actually morphed finally into a mental stimulus for all the people who read books, who listen to the reflections. And we have members from Australia, India, Gulf, and East and Central and Western part of US and Canada with us. And the members have been highly cooperative. They are agreed for the format, agreed for the regimentation, and also for the times. And we have been having continuous sessions. During these 4 years, we conducted also 2 events. One event in physical as a BITEC at Joka campus, where we had a fireside evening, and all the 16ers also got a glimpse of book club. And this year we had a lit fest where we have invited 4 eminent people to talk about different genres, and that also have been found to be very interesting. Interestingly, we read about 54 books during this period, and all the great authors across the globe. The genres range from heavy to light, history, economics, politics, romance, fiction, technology. So we covered a vast collage of topics. And we had a reader of the month for each session, curating books. And then they chose what books to be read. And the specific books have been chosen democratically by all the members. We also invited a lot of eminent guest authors, experts, and alumni from time to time to enhance the experience. To celebrate this 4th anniversary, here is the celebration music.
Nice.
Yeah, here again, congratulating all of us. Milind, you want to say anything?
No, I think you've covered the ground very well. I just want to say that, we both, Srinivas and I, are really happy that what started as just a brainwave has mushroomed into this beautiful book club over 4 years, thanks to the cooperation and participation from all of you. So, as a team venture, I think we feel really proud and happy that we've reached this 4th anniversary. And good to have all of you here to celebrate it.
Congrats, Milind and Yanks. You both been the people driving
Thank
this
you.
much. It's amazing that you're doing it for 4 years consecutively, month after month.
And it's being run
Yeah.
so well, so beautifully.
Yeah, I think the good news is that we are not alone in the globe. I think there are other people also are celebrating 4th anniversary. So I'm just sharing one clip.
Today's a really special morning here on the plaza because we have 4 of our fabulous Read with Jenna authors giving out books, celebrating 4 years of Jenna's book club. First of all, happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
We got America reading again.
Thank you. It's been so much fun. And let me introduce you to 4 of my favorites. We have Nicole Dennis-Benn. She's the author of Patsy.
Okay.
We have Megha Majumdar. She's the author of A Burning. Chen Julie Wong, author of Beautiful Country. And Ann Napolitano, author of Dear Edward, which is now a show on Apple Plus for those who
that's right.
don't read as much like you.
I'm gonna
Carson.
read your work, Ann.
I want to thank you guys so much for being here today to celebrate 4 years.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
So McNally Jackson Bookstore, which is right on the other side of our plaza, celebrating Read with Jenna 2, filling their
look at
window.
that.
That's
Isn't that
all your books, Jenna, in the
That
window.
is
right there.
fantastic.
Amazing.
And it's a great bookstore.
It is.
Yeah,
Just
it's a
in there
great
yesterday.
bookstore, and those, can you believe
There's just
that's
nothing like a good old bookstore, right? And
how
go in
many
and enjoy.
books we've gotten to highlight?
Jenna, this
It's
is
pretty
amazing.
incredible.
Look at that. It's like a library.
So here's the deal.
Hell of a book. That was the first one you got me on.
Yeah, Jason Mott.
You're getting everybody reading again. All right, so in honor of 4 incredible years, we thought we'd share 4 fun facts by the numbers about Read with Jenna. So it's time to crack open a book. Are you ready for the first one?
Oh, yes.
You've shared 52 books.
Wow.
Whoa.
Amazing. Your turn, Craig.
And of those 52,
Yes.
37. 37 New York Times bestsellers.
That's amazing.
That's impressive.
And 28 stories have been optioned for TV and film.
Wow.
And it's one incredible community with today viewers bonding over their love of books.
Oh, but you know what? Y'all haven't always been so supportive, but I love you.
Wait a minute.
I love you.
We came around.
Now
We
you
came around.
have.
Come on.
Now you have.
I came around.
You came around, and Carson, we're still
I
working on
said if
you.
you paired books with bourbon, I would be in it. That's right. Book and bourbon.
I think you should
Club.
start your
I'm
own
your
book
guy.
and start your book and bourbon club.
If I can turn Carson into a reader, then we've got a real accomplishment.
There you go.
But I just want to say thank you to all of our readers, our incredible authors. Y'all have changed my life, so thank you so much. And there's always room for more, y'all. We want.
Yeah, so I think there are
Thank
a lot
you.
of book lovers in the world, and we belong to that bigger fraternity.
Yeah, we belong to it, and we also share the sentiments of these other book club.
And you've done 2 books more than them. They've done 52, you've done 54.
That's
Congrats.
right.
Absolutely.
Good observation.
Yes. That's all of our contribution, which is wonderful to see.
Yeah. I think you can
So,
start the session now.
great. So, as Srinivas has put it, we are looking at interconnected lives, trees, butterflies, human beings in these two books that are fascinating. And as the reader of the month, Raja has done a great job in recommending them. So, on this slide, the credit for this really rare picture on the left goes to Sharat's collection from 1973. And I hope he will hopefully elaborate on it during the open session toward the end. But on my part, I just want to say um, in 1901, at the turn of not the last century, but the last but one century, Indian scientist Jagdish Chandra Bose used his invention, the crescograph, to demonstrate that plants have life and are living beings. Eventually, they become trees that stand tall as sentinels for years, and I believe some even live up to 800, 900, or more years, bearing witness to the passage of generations of human beings. In India, the Chipko movement, which the picture relates with, started by Gandhian social worker Chandi Prasad Bhatt and Sundarlal Bahuguna, and supported by women folk, especially on the Himalayan slopes, tried many years ago saving trees and forests. In recent times, planting of trees for miles on the banks of the Kaveri River has been an ongoing project, and that's what is Sadhguru's Kaveri calling. Life moves slowly within trees, giving them longevity and the ability to create an environment worth preserving over centuries, if not millennia. Interaction between trees and human beings in one book, and reference to recent attention to climate change by way of the migration of remarkably beautiful butterflies in the case of the other book, is at the heart of today's rich theme chosen by our reader of the month, Raja. So let's next listen to him as he's actually flying at 30,000 feet towards India.
But I had a conflict with our travel to India, and at this very moment, I would have boarded my flight to India, so I could not attend this our travel to India. And at this very moment, I would have boarded my flight to India, so I could not attend this in person. My apologies once again, and thanks in advance for the opportunity to be the ROM for this session. And thanks in advance to Sharat and Maurice and Chacha for their reflections coming up. The theme for this session around environmental fiction, stories about the interconnectedness of life, impact of humanity on the environment, and the relationship between humans and nature, was inspired by a book recommendation from my daughter Neha. She persisted each time that I had my ROM opportunity in the book club with her recommendation of The Overstory by Richard Powers as one of the most impactful books that she had ever read. My other daughter Nidhi enthusiastically seconded it too as worthy reading for a book club. Although these are books of fiction, they couldn't possibly depict in any starker fashion the reality of climate change and the need for all of us to take it seriously and be part of doing something about it. Richard Powers' The Overstory is an extraordinary book with profound insight, weaving together the lives of 9 individuals whose stories are linked by their connections to trees and forests. This Pulitzer Prize-winning book is a call to awareness and action, urging readers to reconsider their relationship with nature. The narrative begins with diverse characters, each touched by trees in a unique way. As their stories unfold, the characters come to realize that their lives are part of a much larger interconnected story, the story of the trees and the forests that sustain life on Earth. Each character represents a different facet of humanity's complex relationship with nature. The author's writing is rich, mirroring the complexity and majesty of the forests he describes. He blends scientific detail and precision with emotional prose related to the characters' journeys. Story about trees. It speaks to the urgent environmental issues of our time and challenges us to look beyond our individual lives and consider our place within the broader interconnected life. It asks difficult questions about the cost of human progress and the sacrifices required to preserve the natural world around us. Barbara Kingsolver's Flight Behavior is a novel that deftly weaves together the contradictions and confrontations between science and faith, tradition and reality, hard facts and denial regarding environmental change, personal resistance and transformation, all of it brought to life in a poor rural Appalachian community setting in Tennessee. It follows the central character Delarobia Turnbow, a young mother whose life takes an unexpected turn when she discovers a valley filled with millions of monarch butterflies, far from their usual migration path. The novel captures the beauty of the Appalachian landscape while also conveying the stark realities faced by its inhabitants. The author portrays the rural community with a deep sense of authenticity, highlighting both its charms and its challenges. At its core, the novel is about climate change, although it approaches the subject in a way that is deeply personal and human. Kingsolver weaves scientific knowledge into the narrative, exploring the broader implications of ecological imbalance. I've seen monarch butterflies migrating through our neighborhood, and they're one of the most fascinating sights to see, instantly capturing our attention and wonder. I've included some photos and videos at this link, which you'll find on this slide. My experience was with their numbers in the hundreds. Imagine, though, what they must look like in the millions. Both books are deeply concerned with the natural world and the ways in which humanity interacts with it. However, while they share thematic similarities, their approaches, styles, and focal points differ significantly, offering us two distinct but complementary perspectives on environmental issues. Flight Behavior centers on a single community and intimate individual journey, while the overstory is grander in scope, presenting a broader mosaic of diverse experiences spanning decades and continents. As a result, these two books, while they both address the environmental crises facing our world, they do so from different angles and therefore may appeal to different strata of readers. The images that you see on this slide on the bottom left is an actual image of a photograph that I had taken of what I had witnessed as migration of monarch butterflies through our neighborhood in Frisco, Texas. And the bottom central image is simply to describe where the overstory term comes from. It's the topmost, foliage of trees in the forest. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a map of what's considered to be the subregions in Appalachia. For those of you who are curious about where Appalachia is and which states it occupies, this will give you some additional insight into it. You're all in for a treat today, as we have two excellent reflections followed by a bonus segment. First, Sharath, who has a love for trees and flowers, who's very knowledgeable about them and frequently posts beautiful nature photos from Dubai, will reflect on the Overstory by Richard Powers, followed by Maurice, who will present a thoughtfully written summary in which she vividly brings out her insights from the reading of The Flight Behavior by Barbara Kingsolver. This will be followed by a bonus segment from our very own Sandeep, who, as many of you know, is an ardent fan of nature and who, I would venture to say, probably mentally labels every single tree and flower he passes by on his daily walks. Sandeep seems to have been particularly inspired by the Overstory and embarked on a relentless mission to not only find many of the trees covered in the book, but to also meticulously create a compilation of his personal spotting of various trees during the recent Canadian Rockies trip. Many of you may be aware that Richard Powers himself was inspired to write this work while teaching at Stanford University after he encountered giant redwood trees for the first time. Sandeep's close proximity to the area further sparked his interest. Could there be a book in the making from our very own Sandeep? Chacha, will you be writing one? On the right-hand side is a photograph taken at the Muir Woods National Monument north of San Francisco in the Mill Valley, California, of these beautiful redwood trees. With that, that's my summary, and I look forward to listening to the entire recording and the discussions as well. Thank you very much once again for the opportunity. Take care all.
Milind, you're on mute.
Thank you, Raja. Even though you are not here in person, this was a very complete and rewarding overview of the two books. And one of the striking things for me from the overstory is how these majestic trees for centuries can grow in search of heaven in all parts of our planet. And the second book, which is Flight Behavior, brings out the beauty that we see reflected in these migrating millions of monarch butterflies. So with that overview from Raja and with some very good reflections to follow, as he said, let's move on to Sharat's reflection on the overstory. All yours, Sharat.
Thanks, Milind. You can turn the page. Thank you. I'll begin with a quotation from the book, which is very central to the book itself. It says, "You and the tree in your backyard come from a common ancestor. Even now, after an immense journey in separate directions, that tree and you still share a quarter of your genes." The overstory builds upon this key fact to establish the key relationship and deep relationship between humans and trees and forests. The story brings us face to face with our interconnections and interdependencies with trees and why it is important to live in harmony with them as an integral and essential part of our living environment. However, as we all know, reality is different, and in our day-to-day lives, we treat trees and, by extension, forests not as our treasured relatives, but as objects to be exploited for our use. Although we admire trees as inanimate objects of beauty and providers of natural resources for our consumption, we do not consider them as fellow living beings with whom we share the environment and with whom we need to coexist to sustain humanity and, more holistically, the planet itself. The book weaves the stories of 9 characters from diverse ethnic backgrounds. The common thread is that most of them are second or third generation immigrants for whom trees have played a significant role in their growing years, besides which some of the trees in the book are unique characters themselves. Although the setting for the main part is contemporary, the book goes back 2 or 3 generations to set the scene for some of the chief protagonists. The characters are richly developed, each with their own unique family backgrounds and motivations, especially during their childhood and growing up years. Some have very obvious connections to trees and forests, which have profoundly influenced their life histories and thinking. And in the case of others, the connection is not as clear, yet they all come together in different and interesting ways to support the theme of connectivity of humans and trees. The story revolves around this broken relationship between humanity and trees, and by extension, the Earth's environment, and the negative impact on our environment due to our unending pursuit of economic progress. The numbers are staggering. Studies have shown that in certain areas that were clear-cut had between 3 to 5 times the amount of erosion due to landslides, and the world's rainforests could completely vanish in 100 years at the current rate of deforestation. It has also been established that deforestation itself is a bigger climate changer than all of transportation put together. And climate change contributes massively to deforestation, the most vicious positive feedback loop. The recent slide in Wayanad district, as we're all aware of, is a stark reminder of the unfortunate outcomes of uncontrolled deforestation and climate change. Thanks. So whilst I enjoyed the book, and learned a huge amount about trees, their diversity, and their near humanness. By the way, the jury is still out on the claim that trees are sentient. I had difficulty connecting the disparate characters in the storyline, as there are 4 characters who play out their individual trajectories with no intersections between them, and the other 5 who come together to save the redwoods. For example, the story of Patricia Westerford, the dendrologist, who postulates that trees communicate with one another, is a separate stream, with the only touch point being that the others have read her book, The Secret Forest. And towards the end, 2 characters, Mimi and Nilay, are in the audience when she is lecturing at Stanford on saving the planet's forests. Nilay's metamorphosis from a coding geek into a tech billionaire on the back of his game mastery, and his subsequent rejigging of the game to potentially finding a technology solution to our looming environmental disaster, is a separate track altogether. As is the story of Ray and Dorothy Brinkman, in whose case the absence of a link to trees as well as to other characters left me wondering why they're there at all, until near the end of the book, when Ray's aneurysm and subsequent enfeebled state connects the dots with the trees. So besides the main theme of our broken relationship with trees and forests, there are several other sub-themes that run through the book, such as time. The lifespans of trees run into hundreds and thousands of years. Consciousness and value, they're not just objects of consumption. Complexity and interdependence, destruction and rebirth, each of which is worth dwelling on, but in the interest of time, I will leave it at the headline level only today. Overall, for me, it is a brilliant book and a fascinating book, which should be read as a treatise on trees and the environment, and not as a typical fictional novel. It is a treasure trove of information on trees, and certainly my knowledge and appreciation of the world of trees and has helped my appreciation of old growth forests. It eloquently brings home the point that thanks to our consumerist society and short-term thinking, we are hurtling along on the road to extinction and not doing enough to prevent this existential crisis. The book touches on the intriguing question why we aren't doing enough to avert this looming crisis, and the inclusion of a psychologist in the cast whose theories about crowd behavior and apathy, driven by "but I'm not impacted," helps to answer the question to some extent. However, the book does not offer any silver bullets other than a dim hope that Nilay and his tech team will find a solution through big data and analytics. Instead, the book posits that we should look at trees as gifts for which we should be grateful, and perhaps we will start caring for them, or the other more unorthodox and extreme perspective that, left unchecked, the human race itself will be gone, and nature will continue to live on and repair itself. As one of the protagonists, Douglas, says to the first saplings he is planting to help restore the forest after clear cutting, "Hang on, only 10 or 20 decades. Child's play for you guys. You just have to outlast us. Then no one will be left to screw you over." Sorry, pardon my French. The book succeeds admirably in raising our consciousness and inspiring reverence for trees, in addition to serving as a grim and very timely wake-up call to act for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharat. I think your perspectives coming out as a reflection on the book are really very valuable, even after reading the entire book. And so with that book about trees and the fascinating relationships that we see unfolding between the characters and trees in so many different unique ways, we now move on to Maurice, and she will provide a reflection on Barbara Kingsolver's flight behavior. So go ahead, Maurice.
Maris is with us, but she is in a location where she won't be able to speak. So she sent a recording which we'll be playing, but she will be watching, and I think later on that you can interact with her. But the voice is very low because a lot of people are sleeping out there. So you have to crane your ears. Here she goes.
Flight Behavior by Barbara Kingsolver. is a compelling exploration of what drives human and environmental change, the profound connection between human experience and the natural world, personal transformation, climate change, ecofeminism, and the interconnectedness of life are all woven into this outwardly simple story. The context. Set in a rural Appalachian town, the novel follows Delarobia Turnbow, a young mother who feels trapped by her circumstances. At the start of the novel, she is heading down a reckless path she knows will wreck her life, and the reader is relieved when she is stopped in her tracks by an almost spiritual sight. The stunning phenomenon involving the migration of monarch butterflies ignites a journey of self-discovery that parallels the themes of birth and rebirth, and thankfully turns her around to explore a different path to fulfillment. Along the way, she helps a scientist set up camp in her backyard to study the migration, becomes an unwilling celebrity in her small-town church-going community, builds an unlikely bond with her mother-in-law as they combine to ensure her father-in-law does not sell the land the butterflies have now called home, and takes on the responsibility for a flock of ewes during lambing time, using her book knowledge to save a newborn by catching it by its hind legs and swinging it around to clear out its breathing pipes. Delarobia's life is limited geographically and monetarily, but her imagination is rich, and her curiosity about life and why people do what they do is almost philosophical. Bubbling under her streams of consciousness is a desire to do something with her life. Another theme is that there's no ecocentric vision for climate change. Kingsolver highlights the impact this awe-inspiring science has on different groups of the community, reflecting the lack of an ecocentric vision among humans. Everyone in flight behavior, from religious fundamentalists to the rating-conscious media, frames the phenomenon, arrival of the monarch butterfly, to suit their own interests. Kingsolver also takes some time to explain the way in which climate change has absurdly become a Democrat versus Republican issue, and how something that virtually all scientists agree on is framed in the media as the debate over climate change. There's an interesting passage in which Delarobia asks a climate change activist what actions she should be taking, and every single one he suggests is something that does not apply to her frugal life. Presumed ignorant, she is already doing so many of the things being advocated. Another theme is ecofeminism, in which Kingsolver deftly intertwines themes of motherhood and ecological stewardship, illustrating how the plight of the monarchs mirrors the struggles of people seeking fulfillment. The cyclical nature of life, as represented by the butterfly's metamorphosis, symbolizes Delarobia's rebirth into a more empowered version of herself. Her flight behavior, her willingness to pursue knowledge and advocate for the environment, underscores the importance of nurturing both the earth and one's own dream. This novel ultimately serves as a poignant reminder of the power of personal transformation and the vital role of women in advocating for ecological sustainability and social change. Notably, at the end of the novel, Delarobia's path still takes her away from her marriage, but leaves her family less in debt, her husband more confident, having stood up to his father, her son Preston with a passion for books, science, and learning, and her mother-in-law a fellow woman in arms, if not a friend.
Yeah, that is Mary's Milind.
Thank you so much, Maurice. Your reflection really brought out two very important lessons for all of us. One was that sadly, we don't have a collective ecocentric vision for climate change and remedies on it as yet. And the second important idea was that of ecofeminism, where you discuss themes of motherhood and ecological stewardship. And I think this ecological stewardship applies both to the environment and nature around us, but as your last paragraph states, also for family members who are in our midst. So thank you very much for that very deep reflection on flight behavior. So with that, we go to yet another facet of the richness of these books, and that's going to be presented by Sandeep, where he is going to give a tree talk that's largely based on beautiful pictures that he took while in California, as well as while he was on the Canadian Rockies reunion trip. So with that, go ahead, Sandeep. We are all ears.
Thank you, Milind. I'm sorry if the Sada is back, noise in the
Now we
background.
have sound effects, Sandeep. It's okay.
There's nothing I can do about it. I'm sitting out and I have no better place to go to. So, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
A line on the first page of the overstory was intriguing. Laurel insists that even death is nothing to sleep over. So a part of my pastime ogling at trees was figured trying to find a laurel as our home was partly located on Laurel Avenue. My many failed attempts drove me to instead check out the names of the other fabulous trees in Menlo Park. That journey has now culminated in a full-time pastime of ogling at trees. North America, just as India, is blessed with a wide variety of tree species. The names and pics below are of trees that I had never come across in India, so now sharing. Now reading the Book of Leaves, a leaf by leaf guide to 600 of the world's great trees. I will now go alphabetically. The names of the trees I had not known about earlier and perhaps shared the same anxiety amongst those who read the book. The first tree is the aspens. I could not find any aspens in Menlo Park until we landed in Calgary and Nidhi told me that there are aspens outside the hotel and I got to see them. The aspen leaf and the aspen tree bark, you can see it's white in color and it's very similar to a birch. For a moment I thought it was a birch because you will see the leaf of a birch and the leaf of an aspen is similar, but the leaves of an aspen quake with the wind and they don't do it for a birch. Plus, you will see that the birch has certain fruit, which I have shown here, which are very unique and they do not share the same fruit. So when I look at a tree, I look at three things. First is the leaf, second is the trunk of the tree, and third is the fruit, if I can locate any. And fourth, of course, if anything is lying on the ground, because many a times we don't see the fruits on the trees, but we see them dropped on the ground. The second tree, the third tree was cedar. Cedars are mentioned in the book, and you can see the shape of the cedar tree uh, and also the bark here. Can we go to the next slide, next page? Uh, so after the cedars, we have here the hemlock. Hemlock also is a very rare tree, and one does not find them in California, but we got to see them in Canada. And I have shown the leaves of the hemlock. They are very similar to the redwood, but actually, if you go into detail, they are different. The next tree is the juniper. Juniper also is a tree which sometimes confuses with the leaves of a cedar, but it has thorns on the underneath, and it has features which are common with the cypress tree. There are a lot of creeping junipers in Menlo Park. People have hedges based on the creeping juniper, and some of them, in fact, have covered their entire yards with creeping juniper. The next thing is the linden. Lindens are also not available in the park where I was staying, and I saw them in Kamloops when we were in Canada. And they are also very unique trees, and I've shown their leaf as well as the bark, and also the way they are, they very distinctly are different compared to the other trees. Then we have the maples. There is a very, 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 very wide variety of maples available in and around Menlo Park, and we also saw a lot of them in Canada. Not all maples have the maple syrup. It's only the sweet maple which has the maple syrup. The interesting thing about maple is that the maple
Yes,
tree
Srinivas.
has to have samaras. Samaras are the basically the seeds which are used for propagation, and maples have I would say thousands of samaras which come every season. I've shown the picture of the various samaras at the bottom of the page. I don't know whether it is visible to you. When you go
Sandeep,
down,
Sandeep, can you take 2 more minutes
yes,
to wrap
I'm.
it up? Thank you.
Yes, I will be able to wrap it up in 2 minutes. Can we go to the next slide, Jan? So after maples, we have the magnolia. There is a mention of magnolia in the book. Magnolia has a flower, white in color, which is about the size of a palm, in fact, a big palm. It's an evergreen, and it also has a cone as its seed, containing the seed. The cone, as you can see here, is shown. It's the size of a fat finger, and the flower is also shown below. Then we have oaks. There are many, many oaks. And the way to distinguish an oak from another tree is that they have a corn as their fruit. And there are at least a dozen types of oaks I have seen in Menlo Park, and they are very interesting. And you can see that their leaves, you will see the picture above, it has a wide variety of leaves in it. Then we have the pine. Pines basically have needle-like leaves, and they have a corn. Then we have the spruce. Spruce also has short needle-like leaves, and they also have a corn. Sycamore is actually like a maple, but the tree is much larger in size, and it's very characteristically different than a maple. Or the leaf is very similar to a maple and can confuse with a maple. Next slide. And then, of course, we have the yew. Yew is also has needle-like leaves, apparently, but they are very short needles, and they have berries as their fruit, as you can see in the palm. I have given a lot of other links for those who want to read and know about the tree, and you can go to the link. I'm done with my presentation.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. That was very informative on the trees that you have followed so passionately and intimately, both in California as well as in the Canadian Rockies, where we saw you in action. So it's not just a matter of ogling at trees, but I'm sure if trees could talk, Sandeep would have got into long conversations with each tree as he passed it. So that's the kind of relationship he has built around trees. So thank you for that visual presentation of trees for all of us. Our guest speaker, Divyaroop Bhatnagar, has been patiently waiting in the wings, listening to our reflections. And he will present a very different take on fiction from the kind of books on fiction that we have discussed or heard reflections on. So before I hand it over to him, I'm just quickly going to introduce him because I remember him from years ago at Hindustan Levers as Debu, a very soft-spoken and suave manager in the 1980s. So never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined such an innovative detective fiction coming out creatively from this author. But obviously, he's no stranger to unlikely journeys. Summers and joyous vacations in Missouri with his family during his childhood and in earlier times became retained memories that eventually have created the Missouri murders. I leave to all of you to read at leisure all of Devu's professional accomplishments as an illustrious Joka man and a fellow IMCN 2 years ahead of us. So with that quick introduction, Debu, let me hand it over to you. And we are keen on listening to your presentation.
Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, Debu.
Okay. So can you see that, all of you?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, brilliant. So thank you very much for inviting me for this session. I know that I have little time, so I will have to make sure I zip through it. Having said that, listening to the other speakers today, I got the feeling of being a rather frivolous little boy who's wandered into a rather serious classroom. So I think the topics which were being discussed were certainly very interesting for me as well. And I, as all of you have seen, have had a corporate career pretty much similar to what I guess a lot of us who are attending this session today have also done. But I have actually now become a full-time writer for the last about 5 years or so. And this is my second book, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it with a little background. So what I'm going to talk about today is classic detective fiction. This is a genre which actually is quite well established and it's very old. The first book of this genre, which people generally believe is the first one, came out as early as 1841. And it was Edgar Allan Poe who was the one who actually came out with the first book called The Murders in the Rue Morgue. And that was the start of this genre. Continuing from there, of course, are other very well-known people, for example, Sherlock Holmes. And the first story of Sherlock Holmes was published in 1887. This sparked off, I would say, almost it was an amazing fan following, which has lasted since then till now. There have been dozens and dozens of offshoots of Sherlock Holmes and people who have written about it. For example, there's even a story about his sister, his fictional sister Enola Holmes, which a few of you may have seen, and a host of representations, including a Chinese woman as Dr. Watson, that continue to be hugely popular even today. So he was actually, this was really the, I would say, the epic of classic detective fiction, Sherlock Holmes and Arthur Conan Doyle, who started this. Going on from here, I would say that the genre started developing in several different ways. And there is something which I call the side parts, which are really, the ones which are not the real mainstream of classic whodunit kind of fiction, but are also quite popular. So, for example, there is this thing which is popularly known as hard-boiled fiction, which is mostly American, and it usually deals with criminals in a modern urban kind of environment. So that's one kind of thing which has happened here. Authors like Raymond Chandler and so on are very popular in this scheme of things. Then there is, the police procedural and non-fiction kind of work. So here, for example, P.T. James, very famous author, and her detective Adam Dalglish, and then some very up and coming people in India as well. There's a book which I will recommend, which is called On the Trail of Thugs and Thieves. It's been written by Alok Lal, who's a retired Director General of Police, and his son. And these actually trace the real stuff which happened around. They're the legal thrillers, and then of course there's the occult. And what better representation of the occult than Bram Stoker and his protagonist Van Helsing in Dracula? So these are some of the side parts which this genre has undertaken. But coming now to what I would like to discuss today, and I beg your pardon for moving very quickly, but what we are discussing today is something called a whodunit. And a whodunit is actually a complex plot-driven variety of detective fiction in which the puzzle regarding who committed the crime is the main focus. So that's really what happens here. The reader is provided with clues to the case from which the identity of the perpetrator can be deduced sometimes before the actual detective is able to crack the case. And there's more to it. There's something called the double narrative, in which the narrative is hidden and gradually revealed, while the other is the open narrative. So there are two types of things which is going on here. And this classic whodunit is actually the largest segment of crime fiction as it stands today and has stood for the last maybe almost close to 200 years. There are some sub-genres. For example, the cozy mystery. This is a very good example. They largely issue explicit violence and sex, and the action takes place mostly in a closed environment. So here, Agatha Christie's Miss Marple series are clearly the best known examples of this genre. Then there are the howdunits, the whydunits, the parodies, and all sorts of things which go along in this particular genre. This actually became really, really popular in the 20s and the 30s. And that was a time when the so-called queens of crime, which is Agatha Christie, Dorothy Sayers, Marjorie Allingham, Nigel Marsh, these were the ladies who dominated crime fiction at that point in time. And it's interesting that even today, the number of women who are writing crime fiction is enormous, and they are extremely good and very popular. So I think this is something which is to be noted in terms of the way that this genre developed. There was a light-hearted club which was formed in the 20s and 30s. In fact, Dorothy Sayers was the first president of this club, and later Agatha Christie as well. And these guys sort of laid down what they called the rules of the game. And these rules of the game were like sort of, trying to define what would be the do's and don'ts of what you're trying to do as far as this classic detective fiction work is concerned. So, for example, all supernatural and preternatural agencies are ruled out as a matter of course. So you can't invent a wizard or somebody who suddenly comes and solves the crime. And you mustn't cheat. So there must be no undiscovered poisons or an appliance which nobody has heard of, which is used to commit the crime. So things like this, in order to actually bring focus to this whole genre and make sure that you actually follow a process, was something which was done at that point in time. There is criticism of the genre, obviously. So the first point is that you've got to keep the secret. In other words, the spoilers. And if the identity or the ending gets known, the enjoyment of the book or the movie is impaired. So, you've got to be careful of that. The second is plausibility and coincidence. So, for example, if you look at Miss Marple in the little village of St. Mary's Mead, the number of crimes she encounters there would point to an enormous crime wave, in rural England in those days. And the role of coincidences, which make whodunits less credible. So, you can't have too many coincidences which sort of add up to the plot. So that's one. And some books tend to fall into that trap. There's the other issue about technological advancement, because obviously, with the growth of forensic science and with medicine and with, the techniques involved in detection, things which were possible maybe at Sherlock Holmes's time appear trivial right now. So I think we need to be then careful about what we do with respect to technology. So, for example, in my book, it's actually set in two different time scales. One is 1910 and the other is about 1970. And therefore, police procedures and so on, which are relevant at that point in time, are the ones which you need to follow. And of course, the last one is that these are cozy, conservative, and conventional. So you actually ignore the reality of what the world is all about, and in fact, the ugly reality of the world around you. And that is another criticism of this genre. Coming to modern times, there are literally thousands of classic crime fiction writers around the world, and the genre is thriving. So people like Anthony Horowitz, Rachel Hawkins, I've just chosen 3 or 4 of them whom I thought were actually very good examples of this genre. And we continue to actually develop and write in this genre as time is going on. If I come to Indian authors by and the whodunits they've written, the first one who actually comes to mind is the Byomkesh Bakshi series. And these, again, are set in, between the 30s and the 70s, and they follow the classic detection fiction format. The chronicler is a guy called Ajit Bandyopadhyay, typical Bengali Bhadralok as described as one, wears a dhoti and a kurta and enjoys drinking tea, and has all the makings of a classical detective of the this mode. Then, of course, Feluda, who, Satyajit Ray, total of 35 stories. The detective resides at 21 Rajani Sen Road. And don't miss the similarity to 221B Baker Street of Sherlock Holmes. So, here again, he's got a chronicler, and he's a self-confessed fan of Sherlock Holmes. He likes smoking cigarettes and pan, delicious food, popular music, movies, and books. So, you get the picture. I mean, that's the kind of thing which these guys are all about. So now, coming to my book, The Mussoorie Murders. Now, this book was released, I think, in September last year. So it's been almost a year now. It features 2 murders. The first is that of a British lady in the early part of the 20th century in a locked room in a prominent hotel in Mussoorie. This is a true story. That murder was never solved, but it attracted the attention of Rudyard Kipling, who, as you all know, was a major Indian fan, and he used to be around India quite a while. He actually referred this matter to Arthur Conan Doyle, who was a senior friend of his. And it's also said that Agatha Christie's first book, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, drew inspiration from the case because it was a locked room mystery. Now, I don't know about the last bit, but the first 2 is true, and it was actually therefore quite interesting. This murder was never solved. So what I did in my book was I created a second fictional murder in the 1970s that is linked in some way to the first one. And while solving the crime, the detective unravels the first one as well, which remained unsolved till now. While writing the book, I followed the rules of detective fiction quite faithfully, which was there in that slide which I showed you earlier, complete with a Watson and a fair chance given to the reader to pit his wits against the detective. So the book has done really very well. It's actually become a national bestseller with a reprint coming in less than 6 months after the launch. It's a light-hearted book. You can get through it easily. You will probably enjoy it. I hope you do. So people who have actually read it, I'll be delighted to hear from you about what you thought about it. But that's my second book. I have 3 or 4 more in the pipeline. Not all of them are detective fiction. I am working on other, genre and themes as well. But I did feel that this is something which I've enjoyed since childhood, and therefore it was something which I would have really liked to do. So that's really this book, The Masuri Murders. Coming to one of the questions which a lot of people do ask is that how big is this genre? How big is it? So these are rough estimates. There are no absolutely clear numbers here, but actually, fiction writing accounts for only around 30% of all books sold in India. The dominant categories are non-fiction, whether they are textbooks, self-help books, management and religious works, etc. People like Ambi, for example, are very successful in management textbooks. Within the fiction category, though, crime fiction is the biggest segment, accounting for almost 50% of all the books which are being sold in this particular segment. So it's a very large and thriving segment. So in conclusion, what I'd like to say is that classic detective fiction has survived and thrived for almost 200 years, which is really quite a long time. Over the years, the genre has developed a distinct identity that distinguishes it from similar genres like action thrillers, spy thrillers, and others of the kind. So it's different. And at the heart of the genre lies the puzzle and the unraveling of the plot, with the reader being given a chance to pit his wits against the detective, with clues and red herrings galore throughout the book. It's a cerebral feast, not a gory one. It's an intellectual tour de force. It's not a blunderbuss. And in conclusion, I'd like to say, long may it last. And thank you very much for your attention. I'll stop at this point.
Thank you so much, Devu. That was, in your words, a very quick journey, but a very fascinating one through this entire genre that you walked us through. So we all really appreciate the time you took to provide this look at detective fiction in a very broad way. Would you mind if we spend 5 or 10 minutes asking you some questions, if there are any?
Most certainly, I'd welcome that.
Okay. So, anyone in the audience? Suresh, Divakar?
Very fascinating talk, Divyaroop, sorry. I know you talked about books, but do you have an opinion about, TV shows that are crime related, such as Law and Order, and in the Indian context, Delhi Crime? Where would you classify them?
So, thanks, Suresh. Call me Debu, yaar. Everybody calls me Debu. That's what I've been known as. So, having said that, yaar, see, the thing is like this, that like the books, the thriller series also follow, the same kind of depictions. So, there are things which are spy stuff. There are, there's police detection and procedures like, Crime Patrol, for example. And there are straightforward detective ones as well. So they all follow the same genre split, which the books tend to do as well. So depending on what you like, I mean, there are all kinds of, it's a whole menu of things available.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead with any other questions on your mind. While they are thinking of questions, Debu, I just wanted to share that the reactions here in the chat box are fascinating, and congratulations to you. Sharat says, amazing transition from corporate life to best-selling author. And Suresh says, appreciate and applaud your approach, and really thanks for being with us.
I just wanted to comment, how much I enjoyed this thing on, because even today I watch a lot of these old detective movies, Raymond Chandler types, which are all available on YouTube, and they're in black and white. The other day I just watched a movie called The Chief Detective, which is Peter Falk, and it's a fabulous one. I mean, the star cast is so great, and it's a crack a minute, crack a second type of thing. But one thing I wanted to just, you did a beautiful overview of the detective fiction, but I remember, a long time back when I read this book called Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. So I believe or maybe it's a Moonstone. I think it's a Woman in White. But I think that was the first detective kind of crime detective fiction work by William Makepeace Thackeray, was it?
No, it was Wilkie Collins. Actually,
Wilkie Collins, yeah.
It was The Moonstone by Wilkie
Moonstone.
Collins. I had a longer version of this presentation, which I didn't share with you.
Okay.
But many writers actually consider The Moonstone to be one of the best detective stories ever.
Yeah. I consider The Woman in White to be the best novel ever written. Yeah. So.
But Wilkie Collins, phenomenal writer. So I would suggest that in case anyone's interested, pick up these books. These are terrific.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that with you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Great. Go ahead with any other questions you have while we have Debu with us for a few minutes.
The Debu's book is available on Amazon, and then I picked it up. And like he said, it is a very easy reading, and it's something that a bedtime story. And the way he moves from the 1910 to 1970 is very, very interesting because the context is different, background is different, though the cases are similar. And it's a very well written and easily written. I think it's thank you, Debu.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I like the juxtaposition between a true murder and a fictional murder that you combined together to bring out this book that I really want to read now after your description.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah, Sharath, go ahead.
Certainly, I'm looking forward to getting hold of the book, Devu. Question to you is how, I mean, the book is done very well in India. How is it doing internationally? This is a more general question on Indian authors being published in India. How successful has been the journey to move beyond the shores of the country and become international bestsellers as opposed to national bestsellers?
Sharath, that is a million-dollar question which all of us have been actually struggling with. It's not easy to do this because even if you are published by one of the international publishing houses like Penguin or HarperCollins, they rarely take the Indian authors overseas unless there's an Amitabh Ghosh or there's somebody who's really transited that level. So what most of them do is that you do have a Kindle edition which is available worldwide, but it's not quite the same thing. And plus, the marketing and the launches and so on is something which is deficit. So I'm actually struggling with this. I do believe that my book has got enough, there's enough storyline in this about all sorts of other stuff which might appeal to people abroad. But frankly, I haven't quite really figured out how to do that. So that's where it is.
I would say, isn't that the publisher's role to support authors like you? And I mean, there are Japanese authors, there are Swedish authors who have become famous and worldwide recognition, bestsellers, international bestsellers. I'm just surprised that some of these wonderful books like yours, I'm sure, which as I said, I want to read. I'm sure there's a market for these. I'm surprised they're not pushing them hard enough yet.
I mean, without casting any aspersions on the publishing industry, I mean, I would say that these guys are basically they're in it for making a little bit of money, and their thought process beyond that is something which I'm yet to actually experience. I'm new in this game, so we will have to see. But just again to reiterate, this is something I'd like to do, but I'm struggling with it.
Good. All the best for that.
Thanks, sir. I hope you enjoy the book.
Yep.
Thank you. Ishan, you had a question?
You're mute, Ishan.
Okay. You are on mute.
No question. I was just being appreciative.
Okay, good.
Hi, Ishan. How are you doing? Good to see
Very
you.
well. Very well. I loved your analysis. It just put the whole genre into perspective. I thought it was really nicely done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Debu, is there a chance that this one will be made into a movie?
Oh, it's yeah. Actually the book, the film rights have already been sold.
Oh, congrats.
There is a producer by the name of there's this guy who produced this movie like Gangs of Wasepur and Tanu Weds Manu. So he's a guy called Sunil Bora. He's bought the rights and he's currently working on what he would like to do with this as far as the film adaptation is concerned. So I'm hopeful, yes, something should emerge.
I hope it doesn't have songs in it.
Oh, well, the thing is that I have sort of learned one lesson, which is that I've kept my hands off this. The movie making is not my trip.
This Debu, the Gangs of Wasepur you mentioned is written by Grover.
I'm not sure who the author is, but
Okay,
the guy who produced it is a guy called Sunil Bora. So he is a chap who actually has bought the rights for this Masuri murders as well. And as I was mentioning, I have nothing to do with what is the outcome.
Complex ecosystem. Complex ecosystem. Somebody owns the book rights, somebody owns the screenplay, somebody gets the writer, somebody then gets the producer. Very complex. I think all you need to do, Debu, is ask for some visibility and some recognition that it comes out of your book. That's all. Beyond that, there's nothing you can do.
Precisely, that's exactly what is going to be there. So there'll be this thing saying that it is based on the novel by and the rest they can do pretty much what they like.
It should not become a Three Idiots story.
Yeah. I mean, Chetan Bhagat had a terrible time with that.
Correct.
Personally, I feel that the movie was actually pretty good. I quite liked it, but there it is.
And it had songs in it.
It has songs in it. It has songs in it. In fact, that is something which is going to happen, I'm sure. So, and running around.
But you have to fight like this Harinder Sikka and all whom Razi was made. He wrote a book called Rahman. Demand some recognition of your concept. By the time the movie comes out, it's not the same thing, but some recognition, because the Indian ecosystem on that is broken. Anybody can take anything and do anything with it,
Yeah, you're quite right. And especially because, the first murder is not fictional. It's something which is in the public domain. So you can pick it up and pretty much do what you like with it. Yes, you're right.
People will say inspired by, they will mess around with the whole thing,
This has really been a treat for all of us, Debu.
Very nice.
So, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you consider coming again with your next thriller or detective function book.
Well, let the next book come out, and then we'll reconnect. All the best to you. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Good luck, and thank you again, Debu. Thank you.
Good to see you after many years.
After many years.
Yes. Take care.
Take care. Take care. Bye.
Bye. So, any appetite for a discussion on these two fascinating books that Raja had recommended for today? Any comments? Any thoughts?
Milind, on this flight behavior thing, it is very difficult read. But just when you think it's like going all over the place, one nugget will come out on climate. One nugget will come out on science. I think that to a certain extent, the author creates an alternate universe and then brings you back to lessons every 5-10 pages. Just when I was telling myself, where is this book going? There would be something on something like very deep. So actually, there are about 20 deep lessons hidden in this book. And maybe that's why it's doing well. It's a sense I got.
No, absolutely. I think, as I said, Maurice brought out two of those important lessons. One, that collectively we are doing nothing about climate change. And the second idea, which I found very innovative, that there is such a thing as ecofeminism, meaning, women who are trying to do this. And that was implicit in Sharat's photograph that he shared, where women folk were part of the Chipko movement.
The history is that it was started by the ladies, not it started as a folk movement, not by the politicians, by the way.
Sharat, first time
I know
that name. I always knew Bahuguna. I didn't even know there was another name. So I'm glad you brought the other guy also out.
Yeah. So, often this happens that the cooperative movement in Gujarat, for example, we think Kurian is the guy who's associated with it. But somebody called Tribhuvan Das Patel is the one who did all the hard work.
Yeah, but Patel one knows about because it's the farmers thing, but
Yeah,
but
exactly.
this was new for me.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
Good.
Also, the other thing about flight behavior was the alternate Americas. I mean, we know about it vaguely, but she really brings it to life. I mean, this is J.D. Vance's America. I mean,
no,
it is J.D. Vance's hometown.
I know.
The Appalachians.
And Barbara Kingsolver comes from that area. She lives there.
Yeah.
But interestingly, the migration of monarch butterflies to the Appalachia is a matter of fiction. It hasn't ever happened. So that's what is mentioned at the very end.
They said it's based on reality. Like Mexico said they came. No, they're not come there, but from Mexico they moved out.
Absolutely. That part is true. So she's used a lot of fact to build the fiction.
She's used her terrain where she lives to create this story.
Exactly. So in both the books, I found, like you said, that fiction is closely interwoven with facts. But the narrative is very
strong
powerful.
messages bunged in occasionally as a wake-up call. I think that's why they're doing well, frankly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank
It's
you,
good
guys.
to have Kumud with us today. I think it's after a long time she joined us.
And Kumud, if you came for the 4th anniversary, make this a habit, please. Come to the book club as often as you can.
Yeah, change the timing, Milind. I am not an early riser. That's my biggest issue.
We keep trying.
Yeah, it's just that I managed to get up and I realized it was still on. But I'm making no excuses for my timing in the morning. I'm not an early riser. So
no problem. No problem. When we change the time a little, we'll see you more often.
Yeah. True.
Okay. Very good. So great session again. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sharat, for your reflection.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, we are not meeting in September, so take some time off, read what you like. We are not going to prescribe anything.
Thanks.
But
Thanks,
we'll come back in October with Pushpita's books.
Thank you for your permission.
Enjoy reading those. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.